The origins of the Dreadnought can be traced to the early years of the Great Crusade, when the Emperor of Mankind first ventured from Terra with his genetically enhanced Thunder Warriors, and later the nascent legions Astartes. Unlike many Imperial weapon systems that draw their lineage from the Dark Age of technology, Dreadnought war machines were specifically developed to address a unique problem facing the Emperor's growing armies: the tragic loss of exceptional warriors to grievous injuries that even their enhanced physiology could not overcome. The first Dreadnought chassis emerged from the forges of Mars in the late 30th millennium, after the Treaty of Mars formalized the alliance between the Emperor and the Mechanicum. Martian tech priests, working closely with the Emperor's own Gene Wrights, designed these early walking sarcophagi not merely as weapons of war, but as a means to preserve the Emperor's finest warriors beyond the natural limits of their flesh. Early Dreadnought designs were cruder than their modern counterparts, with more primitive life support systems and less sophisticated neural interfaces. The Contemptor pattern, which would later become widely regarded as the pinnacle of Dreadnought technology, had not yet been perfected. Instead, warriors were interred in bulkier, less agile frames that nevertheless served their primary purpose, keeping a dying space marine alive while allowing them to continue serving the Emperor's Great Crusade. These prototype Dreadnoughts proved their worth during the campaigns to unify the Sol system. On Luna, during the pacification of the Gene cults, several grievously wounded Astartes who would have otherwise perished were successfully interred in the first generation of Dreadnought chassis. Their continued service, despite injuries that had left them little more than broken torsos and shattered limbs, demonstrated the viability of the Dreadnought concept. The psychological impact of internment was not fully understood in these early days. Tech priests viewed the process as a triumph of machine over the weakness of flesh, while the Space Marines themselves held more complex views. For the warrior interred, the experience was often disorienting and traumatic. Early amniotic fluid formulations were imperfect, and the pain suppressant systems frequently inadequate. Some of the first Dreadnoughts suffered greatly before refinements in the technology eased their transition. As the Great Crusade expanded beyond Sol, the Mechanicum continued to refine Dreadnought technology. The Mark II and Mark III chassis introduced improved weapon systems, more responsive control interfaces, and better armor protection. By the time the Crusade had reached its zenith, Dreadnoughts had become an established component of Legion warfare, with each of the 18 Space Marine legions maintaining a cadre of these ancient warriors. The Contemptor pattern Dreadnought emerged approximately 50 years into the Great Crusade, representing a quantum leap in Dreadnought technology. Utilizing rare archaeotech and incorporating systems that even the most learned Magos could not fully comprehend, the Contemptor offered unprecedented mobility and combat effectiveness. Its advanced adamantic shielding provided protection beyond that of conventional armor, while its frame allowed for a degree of dexterity previously unattainable. The Leviathan pattern, developed later, pushed the boundaries even further. Designed for siege warfare and void combat, these massive war machines could withstand punishment that would destroy lesser vehicles. However, they came with a cost. The neural interface placed tremendous strain on the occupant, often accelerating mental degradation and requiring more frequent periods of suspended animation. Each legion developed its own traditions surrounding Dreadnoughts during this formative period. The Death Guard valued resilience above all, modifying their Dreadnoughts with redundant systems that mirrored their own physical endurance. The White Scars, despite their cultural emphasis on speed and mobility, came to respect their Dreadnoughts as repositories of wisdom, calling them honored ancients in their native Chagorian. The Ultramarines, methodical as always, codified specific protocols for Dreadnought deployment and maintenance that would later form the basis of Codex Astartes guidelines. The Emperor's children, before their fall, treated their Dreadnoughts as living embodiments of perfection, warriors who had transcended the limitations of mortal flesh. Their Dreadnoughts were adorned with intricate engravings and filigree that celebrated this transformation. In stark contrast, the Death Guard maintained their Dreadnoughts with brutal functionality, eschewing decoration in favor of pragmatic modifications that enhanced durability. The Iron Hands, with their philosophical affinity for the machine, viewed internment in a dreadnought as an honor rather than a last resort. Under Primarch Ferrus Manus, they developed specialized variants with integrated forged tools that could perform battlefield repairs on other vehicles. Meanwhile, the Thousand Sons incorporated psychic amplifiers into their dreadnought designs, allowing their interred psychers to continue wielding their powers from within their mechanical shells. The word-bearers, even before their turn to chaos, adorned their dreadnoughts with scripture and religious iconography. Initially, these were passages exalting the Emperor. Later, they would be replaced with darker verses. The Night Lords modified their dreadnoughts' voxcasters to emit terror-inducing sounds, weaponizing fear even in this aspect of their arsenal. Perhaps no Legion integrated dreadnoughts more thoroughly into their culture than the Iron Warriors. Primarch Perturabo, with his genius for mechanical engineering, personally redesigned aspects of dreadnought technology to better serve in protracted siege warfare. Iron Warriors' dreadnoughts often carried specialized demolition equipment and reinforced dozer blades for clearing obstacles. The Space Wolves maintained a unique tradition with their dreadnoughts, referring to them as Bjorn, meaning bear in their Fenrisian dialect. Long before the famous Bjorn, the Fell-Handed would become the oldest dreadnought in Imperial history. Their dreadnoughts were adorned with totemic symbols and runes of warding, reflecting the Legion's shamanic traditions. By contrast, the Raven Guard used their dreadnoughts sparingly, valuing stealth and mobility above the raw power these walking tanks provided. When deployed, Raven Guard dreadnoughts were often modified with noise suppression systems and matte black armor treatments to minimize their visual and auditory signature. The Blood Angels, with their tragic genetic predisposition toward the Black Rage and Red Thirst, discovered that dreadnought internment could sometimes stabilize brothers suffering from these afflictions. The machine systems regulating their amniotic fluid could be calibrated to introduce chemical suppressants when the occupant's vital signs indicated the onset of genetic psychosis. As the Great Crusade progressed, the role of dreadnoughts evolved from mere battlefield assets to living repositories of Legion history and tradition. Veterans who had fought alongside Primarchs in the earliest campaigns continued to serve centuries later, their memories preserved within adamantium shells. They became teachers, advisors, and living links to the founding days of the Imperium. The technology and traditions surrounding dreadnought internment became increasingly sophisticated. Specialized apothecaries and techmarines trained in the art of preparation and internment, developing protocols to minimize trauma during the transition. Dedicated facilities within Legion flagships and fortress monasteries were established for maintenance and storage during periods of suspended animation. In the years immediately preceding the Horus Heresy, dreadnoughts had become firmly established within Legion military doctrine. Their tactical applications had been thoroughly explored, from frontline assault to fire support, from siege warfare to void combat. Legion command structures included provisions for dreadnought deployment, with specialized transport vehicles and maintenance cadres supporting these ancient warriors. The psychological aspects of dreadnought existence were better understood by this time. The disorientation experienced upon awakening, the distortion of time perception during dormant periods, and the cognitive challenges of operating a mechanical body had all been studied by Legion apothecaries. Support protocols were established to help newly interred brothers adjust to their condition, often with guidance from older dreadnoughts who had already mastered these challenges. For the warrior within, dreadnought existence represented both blessing and curse. The blessing of continued service to the Emperor and Legion, the curse of outliving generations of battle brothers and witnessing the slow transformation of the Imperium they had helped build. Many developed distinctive personality traits. Some became taciturn and withdrawn, others garrulous raconteurs, eager to share tales of the Crusade's glory days with younger warriors. The Martian Mechanicum, ever eager to perfect their creations, continued developing specialized dreadnought variants throughout this period. The Derrideo pattern emerged as a dedicated long-range fire support platform, while various Legion-specific modifications catered to particular tactical needs. The Dark Angels developed the Ironwing Protocol dreadnoughts with enhanced targeting systems for hunting large Xenos beasts, while the Alpha Legion created infiltration, capable variants with sound dampening systems, and modified silhouettes to confound enemy identification. The transition from living space marine to dreadnought is neither simple nor painless. As the Great Crusade gave way to the darker era of the Imperium, the technology of these walking sarcophagi evolved through necessity and innovation, becoming more than mere war machines. They became living tombs for the greatest heroes of the Adeptus Astartes. The fundamental architecture of a dreadnought centers around its most sacred component, the sarcophagus. This reinforced chamber houses what remains of the Space Marine, typically little more than a torso, partial nervous system, and brain. Unlike common Imperial technology that houses a machine spirit, a dreadnought contains the actual consciousness of the interred Astartes. The warrior's mind connects directly to the war machine through an intricate neural interface system, allowing him to perceive through auger arrays and control the massive frame as though it were his own body. The Castroferum pattern, commonly known as the box dreadnought due to its distinctive rectangular chassis, became the most widespread design following the Horus Heresy. Its design prioritizes protection and weapons capacity over mobility, with an adamantium hull averaging between 10-25 centimeters thick depending on the placement. The frontal armor, typically the thickest, can withstand direct hits from heavy weapons that would cripple even a land raider. Beneath this armored shell lies a complex network of fiber bundle musculature, artificially grown pseudo-muscles that provide the dreadnought with its strength and mobility. These bundles connect to reinforced joints capable of supporting the machine's considerable weight while maintaining operational flexibility. The legs contain stabilizing gyroscopes and impact absorption systems that allow the dreadnought to navigate difficult terrain without toppling, though with considerably less grace than the Contemptor pattern. The sarcophagus itself is a marvel of techno-arcane engineering. The Space Marine's remaining biological components float in a nutrient-rich amniotic fluid that prevents tissue degradation and provides essential life support. Neural connectors link directly to the warrior's nervous system, translating mental impulses into mechanical actions with microsecond response times. Pain suppression systems filter sensory input, preventing the interred Marine from experiencing the full trauma of battlefield damage while still providing tactical awareness. During the Great Crusade, the Emperor's finest engineers worked alongside the Mechanicum's most gifted magi to refine this technology. The cooperation between Terran gene rights and Martian tech priests produced innovations that neither group could have achieved alone. Terran scientists contributed their understanding of Astartes' physiology, while Martian adepts provided expertise in machine interfaces and life support systems. This Mars-Terra technological alliance reached its zenith in dreadnought design before the schisms of the heresy forever altered their relationship. The process of interring a space marine within a dreadnought begins when an Astartes suffers catastrophic injuries that would normally prove fatal, yet their progenitor glands and brain remain intact. The decision to commit a warrior to dreadnought interment is not taken lightly. It represents both honor and sacrifice. Chapter apothecaries stabilize the Marine's condition through a complex procedure that preserves neural function while preparing what remains of the body for long-term suspension. Tech Marines then perform the rites of interfacing, ancient ceremonies that date back to the Great Crusade. These rites involve the careful attachment of neural connectors, life support feeds, and waste extraction systems. Throughout this process, incense burns and prayers to the Omnissiah are intoned, seeking the machine god's blessing for the union of flesh and metal. The ceremony culminates in the activation of the sarcophagus systems and the first awakening of the interred Marine within their new form, a moment of profound psychological impact. This transition represents a fundamental change in existence. The newly interred warrior must adapt to perceiving the world through auger arrays and auspex sensors rather than biological eyes. Sounds reach them through Vox receptors that filter and process audio information differently than human ears. The sense of touch becomes abstracted through pressure sensors and damage indicators. Some chapters maintain that the interred can still taste battle through specialized chemical analyzers, though this may be more metaphorical than literal. The psychological burden of dreadnought existence cannot be overstated. the interred Marine experiences a form of living death, conscious yet removed from normal human experience. Time perception often becomes distorted, particularly during dormant periods when the Dreadnought is placed in stasis between campaigns. A warrior might be awakened after what feels like moments to discover decades or even centuries have passed. Battle brothers they knew have died or aged beyond recognition, while the chapter itself may have evolved in culture and doctrine. This disorientation contributes to what Imperial scholars term the long sleep, a gradual psychological retreat that affects many dreadnoughts as centuries pass. The oldest dreadnoughts often become increasingly detached from present concerns, their minds dwelling in memories of earlier eras. This phenomenon varies between chapters and individuals. Some dreadnoughts remain sharp and present even after millennia, while others become so detached they are awakened only in the direst emergencies. The Contemptor pattern dreadnought, developed during the Great Crusade, represents a more sophisticated approach to dreadnought design than the later Castroferum. Its frame features more articulated joints and a more humanoid stance, providing superior mobility and combat dexterity. The Contemptor's neural interface system offers finer control, allowing for more precise weapon handling and movement. Most distinctive is its adamantic shielding, a technology largely lost after the heresy that provides energy field protection beyond conventional armor. The Leviathan pattern emerges as perhaps the most formidable dreadnought variant, designed specifically for the most intense combat environments. Significantly larger than standard patterns, the Leviathan carries heavier weapons and armor at the cost of speed. Its reinforced frame can support multiple weapon systems simultaneously, from siege drills to graviton hammers and heavy flamers. However, the neural strain placed on the occupant by this massive war machine is substantial, often requiring more frequent periods in stasis to prevent mental deterioration. The rare Dreadnought pattern serves a specialized role as a mobile fire support platform. Less common than other variants, the Dreadnought mounts sophisticated targeting systems and heavy-ranged weaponry, including the Anvilus auto-cannon battery and Hellfire plasma carronade. Its frame incorporates additional power generation systems to support these energy-intensive weapons, with enhanced stabilization gyros to maintain firing accuracy even when delivering sustained bombardment. The Redemptor pattern represents a more recent innovation, developed by Archmagos Dominus Belisarius Call as part of Primarch Robout Guilliman's Primaris initiative. Larger than the Castroferum but more agile, the Redemptor incorporates newly rediscovered technologies that enhance battlefield performance. However, these improvements come at a cost. The more intensive neural interface burns through the interred Marine's remaining biological components at an accelerated rate, making the Redemptor a more temporary existence than traditional dreadnoughts. Weaponry options for dreadnoughts span the full spectrum of Imperial armaments, from devastating close combat weapons to precision long-range systems. The Dreadnought combat weapon, typically a massive power fist, can crush tanks and pulverize infantry with equal efficiency. Often mounted alongside is a heavy flamer for clearing trenches and bunkers, creating a devastating close-range combination. For ranged combat, twin-linked lascannons provide anti-armor capability, while assault cannons and heavy bolters offer exceptional infantry suppression. More exotic weapons appear on specialized variants. The Blood Angels Furioso dreadnoughts sometimes wield the frag cannon, a short-ranged but devastating weapon that fires explosive shells capable of shredding infantry formations. The ironclad variant favors siege weaponry like seismic hammers and hurricane bolters, optimized for urban combat and fortification reduction. Chapter-specific modifications often reflect combat doctrines. Salamander's dreadnoughts frequently mount additional flame weapons, while Imperial fists favor accuracy-enhancing targeting systems. The consciousness of the interred Marine interfaces with the dreadnought systems through a complex arrangement of neural links and cognitive enhancement arrays. This interface translates the warrior's thoughts into mechanical actions while filtering sensory input to prevent overload. The relationship between Marine and machine evolves over time, becoming more intuitive as the interred warrior adapts to his new existence. Veterans of centuries in the sarcophagus often demonstrate remarkable finesse with their massive frames, executing maneuvers that would seem impossible for such bulky war machines. While dreadnoughts do not contain a separate machine spirit in the way Imperial tanks or gunships do, the extensive mechanical systems do develop a form of machine personality that interacts with the warrior's consciousness. This symbiotic relationship creates a unique cognitive blend, neither fully human nor fully machine. Tech Marines speak of awakening a dreadnought rather than simply activating it, acknowledging the dual consciousness that must be roused from slumber. The Grey Knights chapter employs standard pattern dreadnoughts, but incorporates additional warding and psychic shielding to protect the interred battle brother from warp influence. These modifications reflect the chapter's specialized role, combating demonic entities, and include hexagrammic wards inscribed directly onto the internal surfaces of the sarcophagus. The additional protection ensures that even in death, Grey Knights remain impervious to the corrupting influence of the entities they were created to destroy. The development of dreadnought technology during the Great Crusade represented a collaborative achievement between the Emperor's Gene Rights and the Mechanicum's engineers. Early prototypes suffered numerous flaws: inadequate life support systems, crude neural interfaces that caused pain and disorientation, and unreliable power systems that sometimes failed mid-battle. Through iterative improvements and field testing, these issues were gradually resolved, resulting in the refined designs that would serve throughout the heresy and beyond. The Mechanicum's doctrines significantly influenced dreadnought construction, particularly in the ritualistic aspects of assembly and maintenance. The belief that machine spirits must be properly honored and appeased led to the development of specific rites for each stage of dreadnought operation. The ritual of awakening, performed when rousing a dreadnought from stasis, includes precise incantations and the application of sacred oils to key components. These practices, once pragmatic maintenance procedures, evolved into quasi-religious ceremonies as the technological understanding of the Imperium declined following the heresy. When not striding across battlefields or crushing the Emperor's enemies, dreadnoughts enter a state of suspended animation within the hallowed reclusium vaults of their chapter's fortress monastery. These sacred chambers, deep within the most protected sections of Astartes' strongholds, serve as both sanctuary and shrine. Each dreadnought occupies an individual alcove, surrounded by devotional icons, campaign banners, and battle honors accumulated over centuries of service. The hibernation protocol begins with a solemn ceremony conducted by the chapter's tech marines and chaplains. The dreadnought's weapon systems are carefully disengaged, and specialized maintenance armatures connect to diagnostic ports across the war machine's frame. Tech marines recite the litany of dormancy while applying blessed unguents to key mechanical components. Power levels gradually decrease as life support systems transition to minimal sustenance mode. For the warrior within, this process induces a dreamlike state, neither fully conscious nor completely unaware. Many dreadnoughts report experiencing this dormancy as a fluid reality where memories blend together across centuries. Brother Amalrich of the Black Templars described this state as walking through the halls of remembrance, where battles of 1,000 years past feel as immediate as yesterday's skirmish. This memory drift phenomenon explains why ancient dreadnoughts often speak of long-dead battle brothers as though they had conversed with them only hours before. The physical maintenance of a dormant dreadnought is painstaking and reverent. Each week, chapter serfs under tech marine supervision clean the external armor plates with sanctified cloths, removing any lingering battlefield residue. Monthly rituals include the replacement of filtration elements in the life support systems and diagnostic evaluation of neural connectors. Quarterly procedures involve more intensive examination of the amniotic fluid quality and the condition of the interred Marines' remaining biological components. Most crucial is the preservation of the sarcophagus environment. The amniotic fluid surrounding the Marines' remains must maintain precise chemical balance to prevent tissue degradation. Temperature control systems operate continuously, while nutrient infusion occurs at carefully timed intervals. Despite these precautions, the biological components of even the most well-maintained dreadnought gradually deteriorate over centuries, though at a vastly slower rate than an unaugmented human body. The awakening of a dreadnought represents one of the most solemn ceremonies in chapter tradition. When battlefield conditions or the need for ancient wisdom necessitates rousing one of these venerable warriors, the master of the Reclusiam personally oversees the ritual. Incense burners fill the chamber with sacred smoke as chaplains intone the litany of awakening. Tech Marines activate power systems in careful sequence, gradually bringing the massive frame back to operational status. The psychological impact of awakening after decades or centuries of dormancy cannot be overstated. Dreadnoughts experience severe temporal disorientation upon returning to consciousness. A warrior interred during the 32nd millennium, who awakens in the 41st, may initially believe only weeks have passed. Chapter protocols therefore include a period of reorientation, during which chaplains gently acquaint the ancient warrior with the current state of the chapter and Imperium. This disorientation contributes to the phenomenon known colloquially as dreadnought madness, a gradual deterioration of cognitive function that affects most interred Marines over millennia. The condition manifests in various ways, from fixation on specific historical events to difficulty distinguishing between past and present. Some dreadnoughts develop repetitive speech patterns, continuously recounting the same battles or conversations from centuries ago. Others experience periods of confusion where they address long-dead commanders or reference campaigns forgotten by all but the chapter's oldest records. The Iron Hands chapter has documented this deterioration with characteristic methodical precision. Their archives contain detailed cognitive assessment protocols for dreadnoughts, measuring response time, memory accuracy, and strategic reasoning capability. These records demonstrate that cognitive decline typically accelerates after the first millennium of internment, though the rate varies significantly between individuals. Ironically, the Iron Hands' cultural affinity for mechanical augmentation may provide psychological resilience against this deterioration, as their warriors already conceptualize themselves as more machine than flesh even before internment. The Blood Angels and their successor chapters face unique challenges with their dreadnoughts due to the genetic curses of their bloodline. The Red Thirst and Black Rage affect interred Marines differently than their still organic brothers. Some Blood Angels dreadnoughts report that the machine systems help regulate the more violent impulses of the Red Thirst, while others find that the isolation of internment intensifies their blood hunger. When the Black Rage claims a dreadnought, the results are catastrophic, a walking engine of destruction lost to hallucinations of Primarch Sanguinius's final battle with Horus. The Unforgiven chapters maintain especially secretive protocols regarding their dreadnoughts. Those ancient warriors who know the truth about the fallen angels represent both invaluable repositories of institutional knowledge and potential security risks. Inner Circle members carefully monitor the cognitive stability of these dreadnoughts, sometimes deliberately leaving them dormant during campaigns where their knowledge of chapter secrets might prove problematic. When such dreadnoughts show signs of severe mental deterioration, they are sometimes permanently consigned to stasis, neither fully alive nor allowed final death. The reverence shown to dreadnoughts varies between chapters, but invariably reflects deep respect. Space Wolves refer to their dreadnoughts as venerable ones and frequently consult them before major decisions, valuing their perspective that spans millennia. Younger Space Wolves often gather in the presence of awakened dreadnoughts, listening to sagas from the chapter's distant past related by warriors who witnessed these events firsthand. This oral tradition strengthens the chapter's cultural identity and provides tactical insights from countless campaigns. Ultramarines approach their ancient ones with characteristic formality. When a dreadnought awakens within an ultramarine fortress monastery, the entire command structure presents itself in ceremonial review. Chapter master, captains, and librarians stand at attention as the ancient warrior emerges from stasis, demonstrating that even the highest authorities acknowledge the dreadnought's service and sacrifice. The Codex Astartes contains specific protocols for integrating dreadnoughts into tactical operations, reflecting Robout Guilliman's understanding of their psychological needs alongside their battlefield utility. The White Scars, despite their cultural emphasis on speed and mobility, that seems at odds with the Dreadnought's ponderous nature, maintain a tradition of profound respect for their interred elders. Dreadnoughts are assigned personal attendants, younger Marines who serve as their eyes and ears within the chapter, keeping them connected to daily life even during periods of dormancy. These attendants ride alongside their charges in battle, scouting ahead and reporting back, allowing the Dreadnought to remain tactically relevant despite their lack of speed. Beyond tactical applications, Dreadnoughts serve as living repositories of chapter history and tradition. Many chapters maintain the practice of recording the memories and experiences of their oldest Dreadnoughts. Imperial Fist's librarians regularly conduct memory scanning rituals with their ancient ones, preserving their recollections of campaigns, strategies, and the chapter's fallen heroes. These archives provide invaluable tactical information while reinforcing cultural continuity across millennia. The phenomenon of Dreadnought madness manifests differently across chapters. Salamander's Dreadnoughts often fixate on their Primarch Vulcan's teachings about the value of human life, becoming increasingly protective of civilian populations to the point of tactical liability. Dark Angel's Dreadnoughts sometimes develop paranoia regarding chapter secrets, questioning the loyalty of newly promoted officers with unsettling intensity. Raven Guard Ancients frequently become taciturn to the point of near silence, communicating only when absolutely necessary and preferring solitary deployment. The most extreme cases occur when a Dreadnought's cognitive deterioration reaches the point where battlefield deployment becomes impossible. Such warriors are rarely decommissioned. The chapter's respect for their sacrifice typically precludes such a final solution. Instead, these Dreadnoughts remain in permanent stasis, awakened only for the most significant chapter ceremonies. Some chapters maintain special crypts for these oldest warriors, where they stand as silent guardians over relics and memorials, their external auspex systems still operational even as their consciousness fades. No discussion of ancient Dreadnoughts would be complete without examining Bjorn the Fell-Handed of the Space Wolves, the oldest Dreadnought still serving the Imperium. Once a shield-bearer to Primarch Lemon Russ himself, Bjorn was interred following grievous wounds received during a battle against a Thousand Suns splinter faction in the early 31st millennium. As the only living being to have spoken directly with the Space Wolves' missing Primarch, Bjorn represents an irreplaceable connection to the chapter's earliest days. Bjorn's extreme age, over 10,000 years of service, has not come without cost. His remaining organic components have degraded despite the finest ministrations of the Iron Priests, and his awakening from stasis takes increasingly longer with each passing century. His memory, while still remarkably intact regarding events of the Horus Heresy and Great Scouring, sometimes fails him concerning more recent millennia. Yet his tactical acumen remains undiminished, and his battlefield experience spans more campaigns than entire chapters have fought in their history. The Space Wolves awaken Bjorn annually for the Feast of the Fallen, where he recounts tales of Lemon Russ and the early Great Crusade. These gatherings serve both ceremonial and practical purposes, maintaining chapter traditions while allowing the Iron Priests to perform necessary maintenance on Bjorn's ancient systems. During these brief periods of consciousness, younger Space Wolves seek his counsel on matters ranging from tactical doctrine to chapter politics, valuing perspective that spans the entirety of Imperial history since the heresy. Contemptor Dreadnoughts like Ancient Rylaner of the Emperor's Children demonstrate how these war machines preserve not only the bodies of fallen Marines, but their moral character as well. Despite his legion's fall to chaos, Rylaner maintained his loyalty to the Emperor for millennia, eventually sacrificing himself to strike at his traitorous Primarch Fulgrim. Such examples illustrate how the Dreadnought sarcophagus preserves not merely flesh, but the essential nature of the warrior within. The Iron Hands maintain the largest number of active Dreadnoughts among Loyalist chapters, reflecting their philosophical affinity for mechanical augmentation. Their fortress monastery on Medusa contains an entire section dedicated to Dreadnought maintenance and storage, referred to as the Hall of the Ancients. Here, Dreadnoughts dating back to the Great Crusade stand in solemn rows, their battle honors and kill markings meticulously maintained even during centuries of dormancy. Iron Hand's neophytes study at the feet of these ancient warriors, learning chapter doctrine directly from those who helped establish it. On the battlefield, a dreadnought's approach heralds inevitable destruction. The thunderous impact of each footfall sends tremors through the ground, while the distinctive whine of servos and power systems creates a mechanical dirge that experienced enemy forces have learned to fear. This psychological impact is no accident. Dreadnoughts are deployed not merely as weapons platforms, but as living symbols of the Emperor's immortal will and the Imperium's inexorable advance. The tactical deployment of dreadnoughts varies significantly between chapters, reflecting their individual combat doctrines and cultural attitudes. The Ultramarines, adherents to the Codex Astartes, employ their ancient ones according to precise tactical formulations developed by Robout Guilliman himself. Ultramarine dreadnoughts typically operate in support of infantry formations, providing heavy weapons fire while advancing at a measured pace that allows foot soldiers to maintain formation around them. Their battlefield role emphasizes coordinated action rather than individual heroics, with dreadnoughts serving as mobile strongpoints around which tactical squads can rally and reorganize. The 5th Company of the Ultramarines demonstrated this approach during the Damocles Gulf Crusade, where ancient Perennius coordinated with 5 tactical squads during the assault on the Tiao-held world of Silkel. Positioned at the center of the Ultramarine advance, Perennius's twin-linked lascannons systematically eliminated Tiao hammerhead tanks, while his armored frame provided cover for Marines regrouping under heavy pulse rifle fire. The precision of this coordination reflected centuries of tactical refinement, with Perennius communicating target priorities and movement orders through integrated Vox systems. Blood Angels dreadnoughts present a stark contrast to this methodical approach. Reflecting their chapter's aggressive combat doctrine, Blood Angels deploy their dreadnoughts as spearhead units in furious assault patterns. The chapter's unique Furioso pattern emphasizes close combat capability, often equipping their ancients with dual close combat weapons or the devastating frag cannon. During the Third War for Armageddon, Blood Angel's dreadnought Ancient Warrior led the charge against Orc fortifications in the Hemlock River Valley, tearing through reinforced bunkers with his blood-slick power fists while inspiring the assault Marines following in his wake. The psychological impact of Blood Angel's dreadnoughts extends beyond their physical capabilities. The chapter's Death Company dreadnoughts, those unfortunate warriors who succumb to the Black Rage after internment, represent perhaps the most terrifying deployment of these war machines in Imperial service. Painted black with red crosses, these battle-maddened ancients are restrained by specialized grav harnesses between engagements. When unleashed upon the enemy, they fight with apocalyptic fury, their Vox casters emitting tortured screams and fragmented prayers as they hallucinate the final battle between Sanguinius and Horus. Imperial fists approach dreadnought deployment with characteristic emphasis on siege warfare and defensive operations. Their dreadnoughts often undergo extensive modification for fortification breaking, with reinforced frontal armor, dozer blades, and specialized breaching tools. During the siege of Hadrake Tor, 3 Imperial Fists dreadnoughts designated as Breach Squad Primus systematically dismantled the heretical fortress's outer defenses, using power fists equipped with hydraulic drills to create entry points for Terminator assault squads. The operation demonstrated the chapter's methodical approach to siege warfare, with each dreadnought assigned specific sections of wall to breach according to a carefully prepared assault plan. The Iron Hand's cultural affinity for mechanical augmentation influences their extensive use of dreadnoughts in battlefield operations. Viewing internment as the ultimate expression of their philosophy that flesh is weak, Iron Hand's dreadnoughts often serve as field commanders rather than mere support units. The chapter's command protocols include specific provisions for dreadnought authority, with these ancient warriors sometimes taking direct control of entire companies during complex operations. This practice was evident during the Gaudinian heresy, where ancient Cargill of the Iron Hand's Third Company coordinated a multi-pronged assault on heretic positions across 3 continents, his millennia of tactical experience proving decisive in the campaign's success. Specialized combat doctrines for dreadnought deployment have evolved over thousands of years of warfare. The ironclad advance pattern, favored by the Salamanders chapter, positions dreadnoughts at the vanguard of an assault with tactical squads echelon behind them in arrow formation. This approach maximizes the dreadnought's ability to absorb enemy fire while allowing supporting infantry to exploit breaches in enemy lines. During the purging of Hive Tempestora, Salamander's ancient Brayarth Ashmantle led an ironclad advance that broke through 3 successive defensive lines, his specialized heavy flamers clearing trenches, while his reinforced frame absorbed concentrated Dark Eldar splinter fire. The White Scars have developed perhaps the most counterintuitive dreadnought doctrine, integrating these slow-moving war machines into their traditionally mobile warfare tactics. Their thundering ancestor, deployment pairs dreadnoughts with bike squadrons in a hammer and anvil approach. The bikes maneuver enemy forces into engagement with the waiting dreadnought, whose heavy weapons then devastate the exposed foe. This coordination requires precise timing and communication, reflecting the White Scars' emphasis on coordinated assaults despite their reputation for wild charges. Ancient Congurin demonstrated this tactic during the Lithanis uprisings, where his strategic positioning at key mountain passes allowed White Scars' bike squadrons to drive insurrectionist forces directly into his waiting assault cannons. The fearsome psychological impact of dreadnoughts on enemy forces cannot be overstated. Imperial battle records contain numerous accounts of enemy formations breaking upon sighting these ancient warriors, particularly among human insurrectionists and less experienced Xenos forces. The combination of their imposing physical presence, the unnatural movement of their massive frames, and the knowledge that they contain warriors who have cheated death creates a uniquely demoralizing effect. Commissar Yarrick's memoirs of the Second Armageddon War note that even orcs, creatures rarely given to fear, would sometimes hesitate when facing space marine dreadnoughts, particularly after witnessing their ability to continue fighting despite damage that would destroy conventional vehicles. This psychological impact is often weaponized through specific modifications and tactical approaches. Night Lord's dreadnoughts incorporate terror weapons like skull-laden trophy racks and specialized vox casters that amplify the interred warrior's voice to supernatural levels. During the pacification of Hive Sibyllus, Night Lord's ancient Malcharian psychological warfare proved as effective as his combat capabilities, with his amplified threats causing entire militia formations to surrender before physical engagement. Similarly, Black Templar's dreadnoughts often bear extensive religious iconography and vox broadcast litanies of hate during combat, their devotional fervor breaking enemy morale even as their weapons break enemy bodies. The symbolic importance of dreadnoughts extends beyond enemy demoralization to bolster Imperial forces. As living embodiments of the Emperor's immortal will, these ancient warriors provide spiritual reinforcement alongside their physical firepower. Many Imperial Guard commanders report increased morale and combat effectiveness among human troops fighting alongside Space Marine dreadnoughts. During the defense of Cadia before its fall, Cadian shock troopers, fighting in proximity to a dreadnought from the Iron Hands chapter, held their positions against overwhelming chaos forces. Inspired by the ancient warrior's unyielding presence and his vox broadcast exhortations to stand firm in the Emperor's name. Among the most famous dreadnought engagements in Imperial history, the Siege of Vrax stands as a testament to their effectiveness in protracted conflict. The 88-year campaign to reclaim the fallen Cardinal World saw dreadnoughts from multiple chapters deployed against increasingly desperate heretical forces. The Red Scorpions committed nearly their entire complement of dreadnoughts to the conflict, using them as line-breaking elements during the assault on the primary Cardinal fortress. Ancient Hellfire, a Contemptor pattern dreadnought bearing twin multi-meltas, became particularly notorious among Vrax defenders after single-handedly destroying 7 heretic Predator tanks during the breach of the outer defensive ring. The defense of Macreg against Hive Fleet Behemoth represents another legendary dreadnought action, particularly the last stand of ancient Gallatin. As Tyrannid forces overran the northern polar fortress, Gallatin held the main access corridor against overwhelming numbers, his Storm Bolter and Power Fist accounting for hundreds of Tyrannid organisms before he was finally overwhelmed. His sacrifice bought crucial time for Ultramarines forces to evacuate civilian personnel and regroup for a counterattack. The chapter's historical records indicate that Gallatin fought for nearly 6 hours after suffering damage that would have incapacitated most vehicles. His determination undiminished even as Tyrannid bioacid dissolved his external armor plates. The technological requirements for effective dreadnought deployment extend beyond the war machines themselves to their transportation and battlefield support. Most chapters maintain specialized vehicles for moving dreadnoughts between engagement zones, from the Thunderhawk transporter to the Land Raider Helios configured for dreadnought carrying capacity. The Dark Angel's dreadnought support protocols are particularly sophisticated, incorporating Techmarine staffed mobile repair stations that can perform battlefield maintenance and weapons reloading without requiring the dreadnought to withdraw from the front lines. The Badab War demonstrated the effectiveness of concentrated dreadnought deployment, particularly during the Loyalist assault on Huron Blackheart's Fortress Monastery. The Firehawks chapter deployed 5 dreadnoughts in a specialized breaching formation, using their combined firepower to create entry points in void shields and armored bulkheads that conventional weapons could not penetrate. The subsequent room-by-room clearing operation saw these dreadnoughts operating in confined spaces where their heavy weapons and resilient frames proved decisive against entrenched Astral Claw's defenders. The Indomitus Crusade following Robout Guilliman's return saw the introduction of Redemptor dreadnoughts alongside traditional patterns, creating new tactical possibilities through their combination. During the liberation of Gathalammer, Ultramarines Force Commander Severus Aegiman pioneered the Redemption Spearhead doctrine, pairing Redemptor dreadnoughts with their older counterparts in complementary fire teams. The Redemptor's superior mobility allowed them to engage enemy forces at mid-range, while traditional dreadnoughts provided heavy fire support from prepared positions, creating a layered offensive that overwhelmed Word-Bearer's defensive formations. The Deathwatch, the Chamber Militant of the Ordo Xenos, maintains a unique approach to dreadnought deployment. Their watch fortresses house dreadnoughts drawn from multiple chapters, creating a repository of specialized anti-Xenos knowledge spanning millennia of warfare. When awakened for mission-specific deployment, these ancients provide tactical insights against enemy species they may have encountered centuries or even millennia earlier. During the containment of the cryptoid outbreak in the Ghoul Stars, Deathwatch Ancient Shabksak, originally of the Raven Guard, provided crucial tactical information about cryptoid vulnerabilities he had observed during a similar outbreak nearly 2,000 years earlier. The Space Wolves' distinctive dreadnought combat doctrine emphasizes their cultural values of heroic combat and saga-worthy deeds. Rather than deploying their venerable dreadnoughts according to strict tactical parameters, Wolf Lords often grant these ancient warriors considerable autonomy to seek out worthy opponents on the battlefield. During the First War for Armageddon, Ancient Bjorn the Fell-Handed famously challenged and defeated a bloodthirster in single combat, his victory becoming the subject of sagas still sung in the Fang's feast halls. This cultural approach to dreadnought warfare prioritizes inspirational effect and warrior tradition alongside strict military effectiveness. In the aftermath of the devastation of Baal, the Blood Angels and their successor chapters developed new dreadnought combat doctrines specifically tailored to counter Tyrannid threats. Recognizing the psychological immunity of hive mind creatures to fear effects, Chapter Master Dante authorized the formation of specialized dreadnought hunting packs equipped with flamers, frag cannons, and other area effect weapons effective against Tyrannid swarms. These formations proved particularly effective during cleanup operations on Baal Secundus, where they systematically purged isolated Tyrannid organisms that had survived the main conflict. The Tau Empire's encounters with Space Marine dreadnoughts have led to specific counter doctrines within their military. Earth Caste engineers have developed specialized EMP weapons designed to temporarily disable dreadnought systems, while Fire Warrior cadres receive specific training in multi-vector engagement to overcome the Dreadnought's formidable frontal armor. Despite these adaptations, Imperial after-action reports indicate that Tau forces still suffer disproportionate casualties when facing Dreadnoughts, particularly in confined terrain where their mobility advantage is neutralized. The diversity of Dreadnought patterns across the Imperium reflects not merely technological variation, but the cultural and tactical adaptations of Space Marine chapters to their unique warfare styles. While the Castroferum remains the most common chassis, numerous specialized variants have emerged over millennia of war among the stars, each telling a story of martial tradition and battlefield necessity. The Grey Knights chapter utilizes standard pattern dreadnoughts rather than any unique variant, contrary to some Imperial records. The distinction lies not in chassis design, but in the extensive modifications made to accommodate the chapter's specialized role in combating demonic entities. Each Grey Knight's dreadnought undergoes ritual consecration by the chapter's librarians, who inscribe hexagrammic wards and psychic runes directly onto the internal surfaces of the sarcophagus. These protective measures shield the interred battle brother from warp influence, while allowing them to continue wielding their psychic abilities. During the Pandarax campaign, Grey Knight's dreadnought Hydraxon demonstrated the effectiveness of these modifications when he single-handedly held the Damnation Cache against a horde of Nurgle demons. Eyewitness accounts describe a corona of silver fire surrounding his chassis as he strode through waves of plague bearers, his psychically charged assault cannon rounds banishing the entities back to the warp, while the protective wards prevented corruption of his systems. The development of dreadnought technology during the Great Crusade represents one of the most significant collaborative achievements between Terran and Martian engineering traditions. Early prototypes emerged from the Emperor's laboratories on Terra, where his gene rights sought ways to preserve mortally wounded Thunder warriors. These crude devices served more as life support systems than combat platforms, keeping the warrior alive but offering limited battlefield utility. The alliance with Mars following the Treaty of Olympus Mons transformed these early experiments into true war machines. Mechanicum Magi contributed their understanding of machine interfaces and neural linkage technology, while the Emperor's scientists provided expertise in transhuman physiology. This technological synthesis accelerated rapidly during the early years of the Great Crusade, with field testing providing valuable data for continuous refinement. The sacred process of interring a mortally wounded Space Marine begins with a solemn assessment by chapter apothecaries. The candidate must meet specific criteria. Their progenitor glands must be salvageable, their brain must remain intact, and their psychological profile must indicate the mental resilience necessary for the transition. Once selected, the wounded Marine undergoes extensive surgical preparation by apothecaries, who preserve what remains of the body, while Tech Marines prepare the dreadnought chassis. The actual internment ritual varies between chapters, but typically involves both medical and mechanical procedures conducted simultaneously. Apothecaries stabilize the Marine's remaining biological components, while Tech Marines establish the initial neural connections to the sarcophagus systems. Throughout this process, chaplains intone prayers and litanies, seeking the Emperor's blessing for the warrior's continued service. For the Dark Angels, this ritual includes the recitation of the Catechism of Resolve, dating back to the Legion's earliest days on Caliban. Blood Angels' internment ceremonies incorporate blood rituals derived from Baal's radiation-scarred tribes, while Imperial Fist's Tech Marines inscribe passages from Rogel Dorn's treatise on endurance directly onto the sarcophagus interior. The psychological impact of dreadnought internment cannot be overstated. The transition from fully mobile Space Marine to the confines of the sarcophagus represents a profound psychological challenge. Many newly interred warriors experience periods of confusion, rage, or despair before adapting to their new existence. Chapter traditions have evolved to address these challenges, with specialized protocols for supporting Marines through this transition. The Iron Hands assign newly interred warriors to the tutelage of older dreadnoughts, creating mentor-student relationships that ease the psychological burden through shared experience. Space Wolves traditions include the telling of sagas, where wolf priests relate tales of the chapter's most revered dreadnoughts, emphasizing the honor and continued purpose of this existence. Ultramarines' protocols include regular cognitive assessment and structured reintegration into chapter operations, reflecting their methodical approach to warfare and warrior care. Mars-Terran cooperation in dreadnought design extended beyond mere engineering to incorporate philosophical aspects of both traditions. The Emperor's insistence on honoring the sacrifices of his warriors influenced the sarcophagus design, ensuring the interred marine would be treated with dignity rather than merely preserved as a weapon system. Mechanicum doctrines regarding the sacred union of flesh and machine shaped the neural interface technologies, with Martian enginseer priests viewing internment as a blessed transformation rather than a last resort. This philosophical synthesis became particularly evident in the development of the Contemptor pattern during the middle years of the Great Crusade. The Contemptor's more humanoid frame and enhanced sensory systems reflected the Emperor's desire that interred marines retain as much of their humanity as possible, while its adamantic shielding and advanced machine systems showcased the Mechanicum's highest technological achievements. The concept of living death, experienced by dreadnought occupants, reveals much about both Imperial technology and philosophy. Unlike a true machine spirit, which represents a form of artificial intelligence unique to Imperial technology, the dreadnought contains the actual consciousness of the interred marine. This distinction is crucial. The warrior experiences a continued existence rather than being replaced by an imitation. The dreadnought's machine systems serve to support and extend this consciousness rather than supplant it. The standard Castroferum pattern dreadnought chassis, commonly seen across most chapters, represents the workhorse of Imperial dreadnought technology. Its distinctive rectangular sarcophagus housing is constructed from layered adamantium plates, with thickness varying from 10 centimeters on peripheral armor to 25 centimeters, protecting the frontal sections where the Marine's remains are housed. The chassis stands approximately 3.7 meters tall in standard configuration, with weight varying between 8.5 and 12 tons, depending on weapons loadout and additional armor plating. The fiber bundle musculature that powers Castroferum movement consists of artificially grown pseudomuscles cultivated from vat-grown protein strands interwoven with adamantium fibers. These bundles connect to pneumatic pistons at major articulation points, providing the chassis with strength sufficient to crush armored vehicles while maintaining fine motor control for weapon handling. Power generation comes from a centrally mounted plasma reactor housed in the lower torso, with coolant systems running throughout the frame to prevent overheating during extended operations. The neural interface systems that connect the interred marine to the dreadnought systems represent some of the most sophisticated technology in Imperial arsenal. Direct neural connectors link to the Marine's remaining nervous system, translating thought impulses into mechanical actions with response times measured in microseconds. Sensory input comes through advanced Auspex arrays that provide a 360-degree tactical awareness, though many occupants report that this artificial perception lacks the nuance of biological senses. The Contemptor pattern, developed during the Great Crusade's middle period, represents a more sophisticated approach to dreadnought design. Standing taller than the Castroferum at approximately 4.5 meters, the Contemptor's more humanoid stance provides superior mobility and weapon handling. Its distinctive curved sarcophagus housing contains more advanced life support systems, including enhanced amniotic fluid formulations that better preserve biological components over extended periods. Most distinctive among Contemptor systems is its adamantic shielding, a technology largely lost after the Horus Heresy. These energy fields provide protection beyond physical armor, capable of deflecting energy weapons and reducing the impact of kinetic projectiles. The technology relies on principles similar to void shield generators, but miniaturized and calibrated specifically for the dreadnought frame. During the Battle of Calth, Ultramarines Contemptor Ancient Saffron demonstrated this technology's effectiveness when he advanced through concentrated Word-Bearer's heavy weapons fire. his atomantic shields flaring with each impact, but maintaining integrity long enough to reach and destroy the traitor artillery positions. The massive Leviathan pattern emerged during the final years of the Great Crusade, designed specifically for the most intense combat environments. Standing nearly 5 meters tall and weighing upwards of 25 tons, the Leviathan sacrifices mobility for unprecedented durability and firepower. Its reinforced frame incorporates specialized shock absorption systems that allow it to withstand direct hits from anti-tank weapons, while its expanded weapon hardpoints can support multiple heavy systems simultaneously. The neural burden placed on Leviathan occupants exceeds that of other patterns, necessitating specialized interface protocols and more frequent periods in stasis to prevent mental deterioration. Despite these drawbacks, the Leviathan's battlefield performance makes it invaluable for the most demanding engagements. During the Badab War, Minotaur's chapter Leviathan Dreadnought Hecatan Yakos spearheaded the assault on Huron Blackheart's fortress, absorbing firepower that would have destroyed multiple tanks while systematically eliminating defensive positions with his siege drills and grav flux bombard. The rare Deredeo pattern serves a specialized role as a mobile fire support platform. Less common than other variants, the Deredeo's frame incorporates enhanced targeting cogitators and stabilization systems optimized for long-range engagement. Its distinctive silhouette features an elevated sarcophagus housing that provides superior battlefield visibility, with weapon mounts positioned to maximize firing arcs. The Anvilus autocannon battery, its signature armament, can sustain fire rates that would overheat conventional systems thanks to specialized cooling arrays integrated throughout the chassis. The Redemptor pattern represents Belisarius Call's reinterpretation of Dreadnought design, incorporating technological innovations developed during his 10,000-year work on the Primaris project. Larger than the Castroferum but more agile than its bulk would suggest, the Redemptor stands approximately 4.2 meters tall with a more aggressive stance than traditional patterns. Its macro plasma incinerator, a weapon system unavailable to older Dreadnought variants, exemplifies the pattern's enhanced capabilities, delivering devastating energy blasts that can vaporize multiple targets simultaneously. The controversial aspect of Redemptor design lies in its neural interface system, which places greater strain on the interred marine than traditional patterns. The more intensive connection burns through the occupant's remaining biological components at an accelerated rate, making Redemptor interment a more temporary existence. This has generated resistance among some traditional chapters, who view the design as disrespectful to the sacrifice of the interred warrior. The Salamanders chapter in particular has expressed reluctance to employ Redemptors, preferring to maintain their ancient dreadnoughts for as long as possible rather than consigning them to a faster end. Weaponry options for dreadnoughts span the full spectrum of Imperial armaments, with loadouts typically tailored to chapter combat doctrines and mission parameters. The Dreadnought combat weapon, essentially a massive power fist, remains the most common close combat armament, capable of crushing tanks and pulverizing infantry with equal efficiency. Often paired with an underslung heavy flamer, this combination provides devastating short-range capability for clearing bunkers and trenches. For ranged combat, twin-linked lascannons provide exceptional anti-armor capability, able to penetrate the heaviest enemy vehicles at ranges exceeding 2 kilometers with proper targeting data. The assault cannon offers superior infantry suppression, its high rate of fire saturating target areas with mass reactive shells that detonate on impact. Missile launchers provide tactical flexibility, with dreadnoughts able to switch between anti-personnel frag missiles and crack missiles for armored targets. More exotic weapons appear on specialized variants. The Blood Angels Furioso dreadnoughts sometimes wield the frag cannon, a short-ranged but devastating weapon that fires explosive shells capable of shredding infantry formations. The Ironclad variant favors siege weaponry like seismic hammers and hurricane bolters, optimized for urban combat and fortification reduction. The consciousness of the interred marine interfaces with the dreadnought systems through a complex arrangement of neural links and cognitive enhancement arrays. This interface translates the warrior's thoughts into mechanical actions while filtering sensory input to prevent overload. The relationship between marine and machine evolves over time, becoming more intuitive as the interred warrior adapts to his new existence. Unlike standard Imperial vehicles that contain a machine spirit, Dreadnoughts house the actual consciousness of the interred space marine. This represents a fundamental difference in both technology and philosophy. The Dreadnought is not merely a machine with an artificial intelligence, but a continuation of the warrior's existence in mechanical form. The extensive support systems that maintain the Marine's biological components serve to extend this consciousness, rather than replace it with a machine approximation. Blood Angel's Librarian Dreadnoughts represent one of the most specialized variants in Imperial service. These rare war machines contain the remains of Marine psychers who suffered mortal wounds yet retained their psychic abilities after internment. Specialized warding circuits throughout the chassis prevent warp energy from damaging sensitive systems, while psychically reactive crystals amplify the Librarian's powers. During the defense of Baal against Hive Fleet Leviathan, Librarian Dreadnought Furioso demonstrated the devastating potential of these modifications when he unleashed a psychic nova that incinerated hundreds of tyrannid organisms attempting to breach the fortress monastery's inner sanctum. Death Company Dreadnoughts house Blood Angels overcome by the Black Rage after internment, perhaps the most tragic expression of the chapter's genetic curse. These battle-maddened ancients are restrained by specialized grav harnesses between engagements, their sarcophagus systems modified to administer increased doses of sedatives and nutrient supplements to manage their condition. When deployed to battle, their restraint systems are disengaged, unleashing warriors who fight with apocalyptic fury, their vox casters emitting tortured screams as they hallucinate the final battle between Sanguinius and Horus. The technological refinement of Dreadnought systems continues even in the Imperium's current state of technological stagnation. The chapters with the strongest forged traditions, particularly the Iron Hands and Salamanders, maintain programs of incremental improvement, focusing on enhancing life support systems and neural interfaces rather than dramatic redesigns. These modifications aim to extend the functional lifespan of interred Marines and improve their combat effectiveness without straying into innovation that might attract Mechanicus censure. The theological implications of Dreadnought existence within Imperial doctrine present one of the most profound contradictions in the Imperium's understanding of humanity and service. The Emperor's original vision for mankind never included the concept of eternal warriors entombed in walking sarcophagi, yet the necessity of war demanded innovation beyond conventional mortality. As the millennia passed, what began as a practical solution to preserve exceptional warriors evolved into a sacred tradition laden with theological significance. Imperial Creed teaches that the Emperor judges souls upon death, with the faithful finding their way to his side, while the disloyal face eternal torment. Yet Dreadnoughts exist in a liminal state between life and death, neither fully alive in the conventional sense, nor permitted the release of final judgment. This theological gray area has prompted centuries of debate among ecclesiarchy scholars, with some arguing that Dreadnought internment represents a form of purgatory, where warriors atone for mortal failings through continued service. The Blood Angels chapter's interpretation proves particularly illuminating. Their chapter traditions hold that Sanguinius himself blessed the first Dreadnought designs, seeing in them a reflection of his own immortality through legacy. Chaplain Astoreth's treatise on immortal service suggests that the extended existence of Dreadnoughts allows these warriors to accumulate sufficient glory to counterbalance any spiritual failings, ensuring their eventual acceptance at the Emperor's side when their sarcophagi finally fail. Space Wolves shamans view their Dreadnoughts, or great ancestors in their native Fenrisian, as existing partially in the spirit realm. They believe the warrior's soul remains tethered to his physical remains through ancient runic bindings, neither fully present in the material world nor completely transitioned to the afterlife. This liminal existence grants these ancients a form of prophetic insight, explaining why Wolf Lords consult them before major decisions and heed their counsel even in matters beyond warfare. The Dark Angels maintain more secretive theological interpretations, particularly regarding dreadnoughts who bear knowledge of the fallen. Inner Circle documents recovered from abandoned strongholds suggest these ancient warriors serve as living penances, their extended existence a form of redemption for the Legion's ancient shame. Each campaign, each battle, each enemy slain represents another step toward absolution, not merely for themselves, but for the chapter as a whole. For the wider Imperium, dreadnoughts embody the concept of eternal service that underpins imperial faith. Countless citizens witness these ancient warriors stride into battle centuries or millennia after their first death, tangible proof that service to the Emperor transcends mortality itself. Imperial preachers frequently invoke dreadnoughts in sermons about duty and sacrifice, pointing to these walking relics as examples of devotion beyond human comprehension. The philosophical questions raised by centuries of warfare within a metal shell have haunted the Imperium's greatest thinkers. Chief among these concerns is the gradual erosion of humanity experienced by interred Marines. As decades become centuries and centuries stretch into millennia, the psychological distance between the dreadnought and normal human experience grows increasingly vast. Apothecary Vincent Morn of the Ultramarines documented this phenomenon in his treatise, The Fading, based on cognitive assessments of the chapter's oldest dreadnoughts. His findings reveal a gradual detachment from human concerns, emotions like empathy, humor, and compassion becoming increasingly abstract concepts rather than lived experiences. Ancient Gallatin, before his heroic last stand against Hive Fleet Behemoth, reportedly could no longer comprehend why younger Marines mourned fallen battle brothers, stating, "All serve, all die, only service remains." This detachment manifests differently across chapters. Iron Hand's dreadnoughts accelerate toward complete mechanistic thinking, their chapter's existing disdain for flesh amplified by centuries in a mechanical body. By contrast, Salamander's ancients fight desperately to maintain their connection to humanity, requesting regular interaction with the chapter's mortal serfs and participating in ceremonies alongside planetary populations to remind themselves of what they protect. The concept of identity itself becomes fluid after centuries of internment. Many ancient dreadnoughts refer to themselves in the third person when discussing their pre-internment existence, as though speaking of a different individual entirely. Brother Lazarus of the Dark Angels, interred for over 3,000 years, began mission briefings with "When Lazarus walked as you walk," drawing a clear distinction between his current existence and his original life as a space marine. Time perception presents another philosophical challenge. During active service, dreadnoughts experience time similarly to their organic battle brothers, but dormant periods in stasis create profound discontinuities. A dreadnought might fight alongside a newly promoted captain, enter stasis for a century, then awaken to find his former commander venerated as a chapter hero dead for generations. These temporal dislocations accumulate over millennia, creating a fragmented experience of history where only the dreadnought's own service provides continuity. The question of whether this extended existence constitutes a blessing or curse divides opinion even among the interred themselves. Chaplain records from multiple chapters document the evolving perspectives of dreadnoughts across their service lifespans. Newly interred Marines typically express gratitude for continued service opportunity, while those who have served for millennia often develop more complex views. Ancient Mordian of the Imperial Fists, after 3,000 years of warfare, requested his power core be allowed to fail following the Nimbosa Crusade, stating simply, "I have seen enough death for 10,000 lifetimes. The Emperor calls me to rest." When a dreadnought systems finally fail beyond the Tech Marine's ability to repair, chapters conduct elaborate ceremonies to honor their final death. These rituals vary significantly between chapters, but universally emphasize the warrior's transition from immortal service to eternal rest at the Emperor's side. The Iron Hands perform the rite of final transformation, where the dreadnought's remaining biological components are carefully removed from the failed sarcophagus and cremated in the chapter's forge heart. The machine components are then ritually purified and either incorporated into a new dreadnought chassis or forged into weapons for future champions, ensuring the Ancients' legacy continues in physical form. The Ultramarines conduct the ceremony of honored passing with characteristic formality and precision. The chapter master personally leads a procession of 100 battle brothers, each carrying a lit candle representing a year of the dreadnought's service, with the oldest ancients requiring multiple processions. The remains are interred in the Shrine of the Fallen beneath the fortress monastery, with a marble statue erected in the warrior's pre-internment likeness. Chapter records are updated with a complete accounting of the ancients' battles, victories, and wisdom imparted to younger generations. Space Wolves' traditions prove more boisterous but no less reverent. The final feast sees the ancients' remains placed at the high table in the Fang's Great Hall, where every warrior of the chapter shares a toast of Imjad while recounting sagas of the Dreadnought's greatest battles. The biological components are then carried to the peak of the Fang by the Wolf Lord and Wolf Priest, where they are committed to Fenris's harsh elements, returning to the world that birthed us, as their traditions dictate. The Dreadnought's armored chassis is not discarded but placed in the Hall of Ancients, where it stands empty but honored, adorned with the tokens of its battles. Perhaps the most elaborate final rites belong to the Blood Angels, whose dreadnoughts occupy a unique position in chapter theology. The ceremony of Crimson Tears spans 7 days, beginning with the recitation of deeds, where sanguinary priests recount every battle in the ancients' service. On the 7th day, the chapter master and sanguinary guard process with the warriors remains to the depths of the Arx Angelicum, where they are interred in crystalline sarcophagi alongside the greatest heroes of the chapter's history. The dreadnought chassis is stripped of weapons and sealed with golden ceramite, then placed as a sentinel in the chapter's reclusiam. For chapters without permanent fortress monasteries, like the Black Templars, final rites often occur aboard their largest vessels. The dreadnought's remains are placed in a void-hardened reliquary, inscribed with the warrior's deeds, then committed to the void with a trajectory calculated to carry them toward the light of Terra's distant sun. The marshal intones the litany of eternal crusade as the reliquary begins its final journey, symbolizing the warrior's last pilgrimage toward the Emperor's light. The symbolic importance of dreadnoughts extends beyond their battlefield role to embody the Imperium itself, ancient, unyielding, damaged yet indomitable. In these walking relics, the philosophical contradictions of the Imperium find their most perfect expression, beings that represent both the pinnacle of human sacrifice and the tragic cost of eternal war. Like the Imperium they serve, dreadnoughts endure despite grievous wounds, fighting on long past the point where surrender or death might seem more merciful. This parallel becomes most apparent when considering the Imperium's oldest dreadnoughts alongside the broader sweep of Imperial history. Bjorn the Fell-Handed of the Space Wolves has witnessed the Imperium's slow decline from the glories of the Great Crusade through the stagnation of recent millennia. His existence spans the full breadth of post-heresy Imperial history, from the Second Founding to the emergence of the Primaris Marines. In his ancient frame, the Imperium's trajectory finds its mirror, still mighty, still unbowed, but bearing the accumulated damage of 10,000 years of unceasing conflict. The cognitive decline experienced by many ancient dreadnoughts parallels the Imperium's loss of knowledge and purpose. As technologies are forgotten and original intentions obscured by ritual, so too do the oldest dreadnoughts lose pieces of themselves to time and trauma. Yet both Dreadnought and Imperium continue their relentless advance, propelled by duty long after the original purpose has faded from memory. This shared persistence speaks to the fundamental nature of the Imperium, an entity defined not by innovation or adaptation, but by stubborn endurance in the face of overwhelming odds. In the 41st millennium, as the Imperium faces unprecedented threats from all sides, dreadnoughts stand as living reminders of its capacity for survival. When Robout Guilliman awoke from his own form of stasis to find the Imperium so changed from his remembrance, many ancient dreadnoughts recognized their own experience in his disorientation. Several Ultramarines ancients who had fought alongside the Primarch during the Great Crusade were awakened to greet their Gene Father, creating the unique circumstance of warriors who had known the Imperium both at its founding and in its current state. The conversation between Guilliman and Ancient Tariel of the Ultramarines' Third Company reportedly lasted 17 hours, with the Primarch seeking perspective from one who had witnessed the Imperium's entire history from a unique vantage point. Tariel's assessment was characteristically blunt. "We are both relics, Lord. You slept while I watched. Neither of us recognizes what the Emperor built, yet both of us must continue to defend it. This defense, this eternal vigilance, remains the defining purpose of dreadnoughts across the Imperium. Like the Imperium itself, they fight not because victory seems possible, but because surrender remains unthinkable." The cost of their immortality, the gradual loss of humanity, the disorientation of time's passage, the endless witnessing of death and destruction, parallels the price the Imperium itself has paid for its continued existence. In the final analysis, dreadnoughts represent both the Imperium's greatest strength and its most profound tragedy. They embody the human capacity for sacrifice taken to its logical extreme, warriors who surrender not merely their lives, but their deaths in service to a greater cause. Their existence poses uncomfortable questions about the nature of duty and the cost of immortality, questions the Imperium prefers to answer with reverence rather than examination. As the light of the astronomicon flickers and new threats emerge from the void, these ancient warriors continue their long vigil, fighting with the accumulated wisdom of millennia, yet burdened by the weight of all they have witnessed. In their adamantium frames and tireless service, the Imperium sees its own reflection, damaged, altered from its original purpose, yet unyielding in its determination to endure whatever the galaxy unleashes against mankind. In this, perhaps, lies the true meaning of immortality in the grim darkness of the far future, not the transcendence of death, but the stubborn refusal to yield to it, no matter the cost.